All right, welcome everybody. I am Beth Henry-Vance. I work with the DEP's Youth Environmental Program along with Susan. She is my coworker. She's based in Romney. And let me read her little bio here. So Susan Parker works for the Department of Environmental Protection, Youth Environmental Program District 2. Before coming to the DEP, she worked for the West Virginia Division of Agriculture, overseeing the CAPS program dealing with invasive insects. So she knows all about insects. She loves teaching students about their environment and helping make the earth a better place. In her free time, she enjoys hiking, spending time with her family's farm, and time in her garden. So thanks so much, Susan. Thanks everybody for joining us.
All right, thanks, Beth. Hopefully everybody can see my screen okay. My presentation is a little brief, so we might be getting out of here a little early, but we'll see how this goes. So this is about clouds. And I will tell you right off, I always say this in my presentations that I'm not a cloud expert. I'm not a meteorologist. So I'm sharing with you things that I am interested in learning more about and hoping that you are also interested in some of these things. So this is going to be how understanding clouds can help you predict weather. Aha, okay. So what are clouds? Well, to understand clouds, we need to think about the water cycle. And hopefully all of you guys are a little bit familiar with the water cycle. So we know it's a cycle with no beginning and no end. We know that water is collected in large bodies of water, mostly our oceans on the earth. We know that they heat up from the sun and that causes evaporation, and evaporation goes into the clouds. They condense into the clouds. Then as those clouds get heavy with water molecules, then we get precipitation and then collection, and it begins all over again. So kind of to be very specific about how clouds are formed, you can see there in that graphic, the sun's heat is coming down. Air from the ground begins to warm and it begins to go up, up, up. And then it starts to cool as it reaches different altitude. And then the moisture comes together as the warm air rises, it cools to form water vapor. And that's basically what we're visually seeing is clouds are made of lots of droplets or water vapor in the sky. So these clouds are made up of millions of tons of water. So it's crazy to think that these big fluffy clouds that we see are really that dense and heavy. So that just gives you an idea of what clouds are. Okay, so can you see my screen all right? Because I feel like it's wonky. Can you see everything on it?
There are a couple gray bars on there. So the top words are covered up.
Yeah, it's where I have the controls, and I was afraid of that, and I don't want to. Let me see if I can put it in the bottom. Is that better? Maybe. Okay. So what do we already know about clouds? We know clouds carry precipitation. So right now in the chat, I want you to give me some examples of precipitation, and these should be pretty easy to you. What are some things that come from clouds? I know you guys know this. It's an easy one.
Rain, snow, hail from Savannah.
Yeah, rain, hail, snow, sleet, all of that. Yeah, great. So clouds come in many different shapes and sizes. And we know that because if you've ever been outside on a really beautiful day and you've looked up at the clouds, if you've ever played that game, what does that cloud look like? Oh, that cloud looks like a clown. That cloud looks like a horse. That cloud looks like a bird. So we know that clouds are really, no two are exactly the same, that they're in different shapes and different looks. So what are some words you can think of to describe different clouds? Anybody want to guess in the chat just some different words?
We have white, floofy, fluffy.
Yeah, fluffy, white, puffy, dark, angry. You might describe clouds as angry if they're really dark. You might also say they're thin or wavy. There's a lot of different words that are used to describe clouds. So we know that clouds are white, and clouds are white because the water droplets or the ice crystals inside of them are large enough that they scatter and reflect the light of the 7 wavelengths that are coming from the sun. And there's a special phenomenon called a rainbow cloud, which I have a video about that we'll talk about later. But most of our clouds are white. We know that clouds move with the wind, so we know they can move really fast. The cirrus clouds that we're going to be talking about they are pushed along the jet stream, and sometimes they can travel at as much as 100 miles per hour. So sometimes when you look up the clouds, you're like, wow, those clouds are really moving fast, where other times they're a little bit slower. Like clouds that are part of a thunderstorm, they're usually only traveling about 30 to 40 miles per hour. And I'm going to say that's probably because they're heavier, because they're releasing precipitation. So the way a cloud looks can tell us a lot about what the weather is going to be. So when we wake up in the morning and we look outside, we can kind of tell like, oh, today's going to be a really rainy, dreary day. Today's going to be a great day. It's going to be sunshiny and nice. It's going to be a fair weather day. It's harder to determine that at this time of year with summer, because we know that thunderstorms can roll in really quickly because of our hot temperatures. But if we were to look at these two different pictures, what kind of day do you think the right picture would be? Anybody want to guess?
Sunny. From
Yeah.
Sunday.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's going to be a nice day to be outside doing stuff. Okay, so what about the picture on the left? You wake up in the morning and you see that outside your window.
Rainy, dreary, stormy, rainy. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to be packing an umbrella probably, or a rain jacket, and you know that it's going to be a not so nice day. So clouds have been used for centuries to determine the weather. You know, now we have all this technology and radar. If you've ever watched the Weather Channel or any type of weather station, you know, they have those big maps where it shows, you know, how the storm is moving. And especially when we're expecting snow in the wintertime, a lot of times it'll say, here's the area that the snow is going to fall, and this is how much these people are going to get, and that kind of thing. And that's all because we have these amazing technology that lets us determine those things, that meteorologists can tell us where the storm's going to be and about how much we're going to be. Now, they're not always right. We know that. Sometimes they say, oh, you're going to get 2 feet of snow and you get an inch. So technology is not always the answer or solution. But looking at the history, early civilizations used astronomical and meteorological events to help them monitor seasonal changes in the weather. And that's how we know our seasons today. We know we have spring, we know we have summer, fall, and winter because of a lot of those meteorological events. You know, things like thunderstorms, things like snow or sleet, those kinds. So just looking back at centuries, in 650 BC, the Babylonians were kind of the first to use clouds to predict short-term weather changes based on the appearance of them and other optical phenomena, things that they could visually see happening in the sky. Then in 300 BC, Chinese astronomers kind of did the same thing. They were able to develop a calendar that divided the year into 24 festivals. And each festival was associated with a different type of weather, very similar to the seasons we have now, except they had 24 of them. And the most well-known is 340 BC, the Greek philosopher Aristotle. He wrote a 4-volume text called Meteorological. And that was considered to be the authority on weather theory. And he had a lot of things very correct, which was really amazing for that time, but he also had a lot of errors. So this was a rule of thumb for people predicting weather and storms and stuff until the 17th century. So a long time before people finally said, no, wait a minute, there's a lot of errors in this material and we need to have them corrected. So that just gives you kind of a history of how people visually looked at the sky to tell what the weather was going to be, to predict their day, much like we do today. So we're actually going to talk about 10 different kinds of clouds. And there's 3 main ones that most people know, but there actually are 10 that are pretty interesting. And you'll have to bear with me for the pronunciations of these. So our low level, which is 6,500 feet or less, these are the ones that are most common. We have cumulus. So cumulus is a Latin word meaning heap or pile. So those are kind of those big, fluffy, beautiful clouds. Then we have stratocumulus, and we have stratus. And stratus means the Latin word for sheet. So you can see that those are even thinner clouds. Then we have nimbostratus, cumulonimbus. I think I've messed that one up. I tried to get it written down so I wouldn't. Cumulonimbus. There we go. Cumulonimbus is that one. You can see that that is one that can be in the lower level all the way to the higher level. Then we have mid-level, which is above 6,500 feet to 20,000 feet. Then we have alto cumulus. So has anybody heard that word alto? That means to rise in elevation. So alto cumulus, alto stratus are two mid-level ones. Then we have our higher level, which is 20,000 feet to 45,000 feet. And that is our cirrus, cirrus stratus, cirrus cumulus. So those are, you'll see a lot of the words are repeated, but in different ways. And just to give you, if you've ever been on an airplane, you know you're right up in the clouds. Sometimes you're above the clouds. So you're at 35,000 feet to give you an idea of where those clouds are. So now we're going to talk about each one of these specifically. So these are our low clouds. So I already mentioned cumulus clouds are those big fluffy white ones that are just beautiful. And that's when that's kind of those perfect day clouds where you look up in the sky and you're like, wow, what a beautiful day. And the weather prediction for that is fair. And the reason it's fair is because usually a really clear sky day, you won't see any clouds. And that's really our days that we know there's not a chance of any kind of rain. Then we have stratus, which remember stratus word meaning sheet. So that's where the clouds often look like really thin white sheets covering the whole sky. They don't have that form or that shape. They just cover the whole thing. But they're so thin that they don't produce rain or snow because they're not accumulating moisture. And where we live, you could be down and lower in the valley and you see the clouds up there, but as you travel up the mountain, then it kind of becomes fog. You enter into that cloud. So that one is a fair but gloomy. Then we have the one that I can't say, cumulonimbus. And those are clouds that grow on hot days when warm. So those are the ones that we see a lot this time of year because it's hot out, the moisture is rising, and that's the ones that can bring in those thunderstorms. And they are huge clouds. They can come rolling in like towers. And that's to look out for rain, for hail, and even tornadoes in some parts of the country. So then we're going to our mid-level clouds. We have alto cumulus. So remember, cumulus meant to pile up. Think of the word accumulate. So those clouds have several patchy white or gray layers, and they seem to make up of small rows or ripples. And that's really true when you see them out. They're very wavy and they look like ripples. They're made of liquid water, but they don't often produce rain because they're really thin. Then we have alto stratus. And this is a really gloomy day. And you'll see this sometimes in the winter. This is where it's just basically, again, a sheet of covering the entire sky. And this means prepare for snow, rain, or snow. And then the third one, nimbostratus, is when clouds are dark and they seem to fade into falling rain or snow. They're just really thick and they blot out the sunlight. Again, that's another one that you'll see in the wintertime. You know, you go out and you know it's a snowy day because the sky is just a dreary gray. So some other ones, we have the cirrus clouds, and those are real delicate and kind of feathery looking. And that word, cirrus, actually means a ringlet or curling lock of hair. So think of that as looking like clouds that look like feathery hair or wispy lock of hair. And the reason they're that shape is because they comes from wind currents, which kind of twist them and spread it out into strands. So think of like hair strands. And that means a change is on its way. Then we have cirrus stratus, and that's when the clouds are very thin, but they're very white, and they almost look like a really beautiful veil. And those, again, are commonly seen in the winter. But that's usually those days where the sun is out, and you still get some sunshine on the snow. But it means that rain or snow will arrive within 24 hours. So that might be an interesting cloud to study up on so that you can be able to know, hey, if I see that one, I know there's going to be some precipitation in about 24 hours. And then we have cirrus cumulus. So we know cirrus means a ringlet or curling lock of hair, and we know cumulus means a heaping pile. So these clouds are thin and patchy, but they are kind of more robust than our cirrus ones over there. They have more texture to them, and they're full of, again, a lot of ripples. So you'll see that some of these look very much the same, and some of them look very different. So it's something that you're not going to know just from watching this presentation. It's something you're going to have to work on. And then stradio cumulus are clouds that are patchy gray or white, and they often have a dark honeycomb. If you were just in that B presentation with Debbie, you know kind of the shape of a honeycomb to see that. And this means fair weather for now, but a storm might be on its way. And I'm sure you've seen these clouds before when you've been out and about and you thought, ooh, there's a storm on its way. So these are some special clouds. And I thought this was really interesting, contrails. And I know I've seen these before and I've been like, oh, there's a jet line. But I didn't realize that they were actually clouds. So they're still clouds, and they're made up of water droplets condensed from the water vapor in the exhaust of those jet engines. So that's why they form like they do. And I didn't realize they were clouds. I thought they were just kind of like streaks across the sky. I'm not sure why I thought that, but they are actually clouds that have been shaped by the jets. Then we have mammatus clouds, which these look really cool because they kind of dip down in pouch-like shapes and they hang out from the bottom. And they're created when cold air within the clouds sinks down towards the earth. And this also means severe weather might be on its way. Then if you've ever been to the beach, especially where there's a mountain coastline, maybe Maine, along our northern coastline, you'll get this shape. These clouds get their shape from mountains or hills because they're forced to move down over the mountains. And we get those sometimes, but not as much as on the actual coast. They're formed by these sea breezes. And this means an early sign that the conditions might be right for some afternoon thunderstorms. Those are all just really neat ones. So here's a video, and these are just pictures of different kinds of clouds. So to give you a little bit of other information, we have the National Weather Service, or it's also known as NOAA. And that's where we get all those crazy, interesting maps that show predictions of weather. They show cloud movements across the country. And there's just so many great information there. That's where a lot of our news stations get their weather predictions. They show everything from dew points to just all kinds of scientific information about our weather. And I thought that the study of clouds was lumped into meteorology, which it kind of is, but it actually has a special name, meteorology, and that's a person who studies clouds, and that's what they're studying. An average cloud actually weighs 216,000 pounds, which I think is just wild because it just looks like a big fluffy marshmallow up there. And an average storm cloud weighs 105.8 million pounds. It's that heavy with water. And some activities for you to do later. We have, I thought this was maybe interesting. Maybe when you get off, you might want to do this. You would only need a piece of paper and some cotton balls, and you can make these different cloud formations that we've talked about. It looks like they use a little bit of gray paint, but you could easily use a marker or something to show the darkness of the different clouds. That's something you can look up online that would be really neat to do. And we also have these different kinds of books. A lot of these are National Geographic, but they talk about the particular clouds that we covered today. Ultimate Weather, a First Book of Weather, and Everything Kids Weather books. So you might check out the library, see if they have any of these really interesting books that give more information about clouds. And I did have one more video, and I must have went past it. Here is the rainbow cloud. Let me go back and show that to you. It's called a fire
Well, now
rainbow.
to a beautiful and rare sight in the sky.
So we often see rainbows here in Florida, but it's unusual to see one like this anywhere. This picture comes from New Hampshire, and this is known as a fire rainbow.
Yes.
The National Weather Service says the phenomenon is refraction of sunlight by ice crystals, and it often occurs in the summer, keyword there, when the sun is high in the sky.
Yeah. Wow. You have to think about the atmosphere in layers. Way up there, as we talk about those clouds, the high, thin clouds are made of ice crystals, even in the summertime. People think, how does that happen? Well, the atmosphere is colder the higher you go. So we've got very cold air up there. That's why the clouds are made of ice crystals, and that's how that can
happen. And we
get
that. A crystal's like a prism, and if you put light through it,
exactly.
Like
there you go. Also, when we get hail, that's ice, but it's because it came from way high in the atmosphere, and it can happen in summertime.
You know, our higher altitude clouds are going to have colder air, so they're going to be responsible for things like hail and sleet and such. So that concludes what I had about clouds. I know we're running early, but if anybody has any questions, now would be a great time. And I don't know if I'll have the answer. Like I said, I'm not a cloud expert. I might have to get back to you on a few of this.
That was very cool. That was very cool. I liked that rainbow cloud, and I like seeing the other clouds too.
Does anybody have a favorite cloud? Or one that you saw there that you're like, oh, I've seen that before and I didn't know what it was?
Savannah said that was cool. Thank you. Thanks, Savannah.
The one that hang out at the bottom was my favorite. The streak one. Yeah, I love those. The ones that are real ripply.
When we were in camp in person in 2019, we were doing disc golf class, which isn't frisbee, it's disc golf, but there was a big giant fluffy cloud, and everyone said it looked like a camel. And I remember that one. I was like, oh yeah. So hopefully some of the kids here from virtual camp can join us next year in person, and maybe we can have like cloud watching for one day or something. Not really as a class, but we could see, you know,
a leisure activity.
Yeah.
That'll be fun. Yeah, and I encourage you too to just go outside, take a book or a notepad and draw some pictures, and then research and label what kind of clouds they are, and just have fun with it. And that craft activity looks like fun too to take. I'm sure you guys probably have some cotton balls at home, but you could ask your parents, hey, can I have some cotton balls and glue? All right, anybody else have anything else they want to share?
Why is the rainbow cloud called a fire cloud?
You know, I'm not sure if it's an indication of, you know, some event where there was fire, but I think it's just because of the color, even though it should just be called a rainbow color. I think they just went with fire instead.
Because there's all kinds of colors in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Fires seem kind of, I guess, but when you think about a fire, you know, you do see other colors in it sometimes, depending on what you're burning. I'm not sure. Somebody else came up with that concept. I'd love to see one. That would be really neat.
Yeah.
Good question. Anyone else want to share? I hope you guys enjoyed camp. We missed doing it in person, but this seemed like a pretty good alternative. We had a pretty good time doing all these presentations and learning about different things.
Yes, I think everyone had really good questions, and I know I learned a lot. So
Me too.
Thank you. Bye.
You're welcome. Bye. All right. Well,
Thank
that
you.
concludes our day. You're welcome. Bye-bye.
thanks, everybody.